I'm with Erick Mungai today, and I got chatting to Erick after a service a few weeks ago and discovered his work and interest in leadership. And given it's one of my own passions, I thought it'd be great for the church to hear a little bit more about the work Erick's doing. So, Erick, thank you for coming to chat to me.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
Tell me about Yezua. What is it?
Well, Yazua Afrika, the organization, and the word Yazua, maybe I should begin from there, is a Swahili word that means to forge, like a blacksmith. You know, when you forge something. So Yazua is forging. Well, Yazua is an organization that works with young men, with boys between the ages of 9 all the way to 24 years of age. And we simply forge leaders. We forge positive, strong, capable young men, giving them tools and skills, the heart and the mind of a leader, and helping them find their leadership journey, find their role and place in society, and then do it effectively. So that's what we do. That's what Yezua is.
Sounds great. Tell me about some of the programs. Tell me how you do that.
So, you know, the thing about boys is they learn through doing. Young men generally, we learn through action. So having a discussion, talking or being lectured to doesn't work. So a lot of our programs are experiential and outdoor. A lot of adventure experiences, from rock climbing to water rafting to hiking, cycling, paintball, you know, GP karting. So a lot of high adrenaline, exciting experiences. And we have different models for the different age groups. We have something we call Man Up, which happens once a month. And, you know, they hike, they camp, they do different activities and different experiences. It's very, very experiential. And through those experiences and activities, then we deliver on the content, that the curriculum that we've developed. So for each different age group, we have Man Up for 9 to 12. We have Forge for boys who are between 12 to 14 years. That's a rites of passage program. That happens for half a year, 6 months. We have I Decide, about the decisions a young man makes in his life. That caters for young men between the ages of 13 all the way to 17. It's a 3-month program. And then we have Build for young men between 18 to 24 years of age. And again, all our programs, you know, the name of the program signifies what they're doing. It's about building. Building yourself and getting the skills to build for society. So those are the different models that.
And how did this all begin? When did it begin, and what led to the birth of Yazua Afrika?
So Yazua began as a personal passion project, and its beginning is sort of my beginning. I grew up in Eastlands, in Nairobi, a place called Maringo here in Eastlands. You know, poor neighborhood, a lot of challenges, crime and drugs and all different kinds of challenges. And I was brought up by my grandfather. My grandfather was he was a strict disciplinarian. So he really tried to help me find places where I could plug myself into. So every holiday, I was either volunteering in, Street Kids Rehabilitation Center. I was in church doing some programs in the church. I grew up Presbyterian, the Presbyterian church here. We call it the PCA church. And that sort of laid the foundation for me. And after a few years, I began to notice that my life and my peers, something was different. A lot of my peers, the kids that I went to primary school with, you know, every year you could just begin to see the shift and change. And they began to see me as someone who was different and sort of a leader. And I began to also see the challenges that they were facing. You know, by the time I was done with my primary school education, about 4 of my classmates, male boys that I was in class with, had already been shot dead by cops because of crime. So by the time I was done with high school, it was a very clear trajectory for me that something was wrong, and there was need for us for me personally, to find ways to spend time with young men and young boys. So I actually began as a teens class teacher in my church.
Okay.
And Sunday is amazing, but then Sunday is not enough, especially
Yeah.
over the holidays.
Yeah.
So on holidays, then we began to just sort of put together a few programs on a weekly basis for kids to just come to church, spend time in the church grounds, play games, but also just talk to them. And as the more I did that, the more I realized that for boys, we needed to go a bit extra.
Yeah.
Just hanging out wasn't enough. We had to be intentional with the way we mentored them, the way we spoke to them, and the experiences we exposed them to. So that's how Yazua started. It started as something I did
Yeah.
on the weekends and when I had time. And then soon it just became the thing that I was thinking and
Yeah.
dreaming about, and just
Yeah.
became everything for me.
Yeah.
And before long, I just went like, you know what? Let me just put some systems and structures into this and run with it. Yeah.
And why the focus on leadership? Because many boys, younger teenagers would be far happier to be followers than to be leaders. What led to that focus on leadership, and how do you really build that into your programs?
So leadership, why leadership? Well, because young men lead, whether they are intentional about it or not. They have influence. And what has happened, and for me, my experience especially, was that a lot of the influence was negative. And it was there was negative influence because there wasn't any positive factors in society that could inspire, encourage, ignite a passion or a drive in these young men. So, and because of the negative influence, then they do have a huge impact in the safety of society and communities. Crime, abuse, whether it's sexual abuse, or just intergender abuse, drug abuse, a lot of drug use and all those different things, and just sitting around and doing nothing. But then what began to occur to me was that if you don't call young men to leadership, then you leave them to negative influences and devices, because they have so much time in their hands. Something is going to call to them. And ideally, leadership, and it's a deep call for us as men when you're called to leadership and service, because leadership is service.
Absolutely.
And men serve. You know? So if we don't have systems and structures and spaces where they are called to service and to lead and to participate in something, then they're left to be led by the negative influences in society. And our programs actually really just do that. So we immerse them with content, in the content which is experiential, but then there's an element of service and responsibility, community responsibility, and creativity, being creative and creating solutions for whatever challenges that you see. And responding to the call of responsibility. Be ready for responsibility and seek responsibility in community and society. Wherever you are, if you're male, if you're a young man, seek for responsibility. Look for areas where you can be responsible and do something about it. So that's how we bring in the leadership aspect into it. And we believe that the continent of Africa is where it is because of our leaders. And our leaders happen to be predominantly majority male. So for us to begin to shift how the global south looks like, what happens in our communities, what is available, just bringing dignity to the livelihoods of people, then it has to start with leadership. And our young men, good or bad, they are the architects of our future.
That's so encouraging, because my passion is to help breed young leaders, knowing that as you do so, you're beginning to shift the needle. You're bringing transformation one life at a time, as within the circles of influence it has a knock-on effect in the communities those young guys are involved in.
It does.
You mentioned earlier on that you're heading down to Joburg shortly with a number of your guys to take part in a program at Africa Leadership Academy. Tell us a bit about that.
So, one of the other things that we do, again, is just exposing young men and women, especially for that program, to opportunities to learn about leadership and entrepreneurship. And we are lucky enough to get a partnership with the African Leadership Academy, where they have a global scholars program that happens every summer. But it is winter in Joburg right now. But every summer program, every year they have something that they run. It's a summer program. It happens for about 2 months. It's called Engage. So we are lucky enough that every year, and those are some of the things we do as an organization, we seek to expose young men to opportunities and experiences that begin to give them the mindset and the tools to actually have an impact in society. So it's 18-day program. And for the 18 days, they go through something called the BUILD model, entrepreneurial leadership, and around creativity, innovation, tech, and just service community service, where they begin to implement ideas. And one of the interesting things about the program is they're put up in groups and they have to develop a solution to a problem that they come up with. What are the challenges in the continent of Africa?
Yeah.
And if you are responsible for providing solutions, what would those solutions be? And I've seen a lot of the young men who attend this, when they come back, there's an entrepreneurial drive that is ignited in them.
Nice.
And they want to actually solve problems. And that's the thing, about men. We are built to solve problems.
Yeah.
And solving problems responds and calls out the masculine essence in us. And to just respond, even in a Christian way, as Christ responded to the challenges of his time, that you are available and you are present to respond to the needs that are happening within your community. And you're not hiding, you're not afraid, you're strong, you're courageous, but you're also meek and humble in connecting with everyone around you. Yeah.
And how has your own faith affected the work with these young guys?
Well, it's been an interesting ride. It's been a bumpy, not maybe so bumpy, but it's been an interesting ride. Again, like I mentioned, I began in church.
Yeah.
I was brought up in a church setting. And when I began this, I began it as something that I used to do as part of my church service, but then I began to actually see that our faith and who we are really does impact the way we live our lives every day. The challenges we have in our community. And, the interesting thing about moral leadership is that it is faith-based. Morality cuts across religion, yes, but we know that religion influences the way we live our lives. It's actually probably one of its major influences in who we are and how we behave, next to culture. And religion does affect and impact our cultures. So for me, it's just knowing that I have a responsibility in my time here to bring a shift and a change. There's a quote that I love that says, "Give me a lever long enough and I'll change the world, or I'll tilt the world." And I believe that for me, that lever is young men and my faith. That if I'm able to impact and influence the way young men think, behave, and live out their lives using a Christian background and a Christian foundation, then we will be able to change and completely impact the continent. So
I love what you say too about that focus on service, that recognizing that true leadership is always focused around the heart to serve rather than the heart to achieve your own ambitions or generate your own status. So that value mindset is super. Great to hear what you're doing. If folk want to find out more, what should they do? How do folk find out more about your work, or more about the work of Yazua Afrika?
So, if we have our website, Yazua Afrika, and Africa is with the letter K, not C.
Okay.
So YazuaAfrika.com. That's our website. They can find us on Instagram, on Facebook. Just that name, Yazua Afrika. That's the brand. That's the name that we use across all platforms. We work in schools, we work in community centers, and community hubs. So can find us, and if there are places where young men are, please invite us. We love being around young men and just finding spaces where we can influence them positively.
Fabulous.
Yeah, yeah.
Cheering you on, Erick, as you do this work. It is so significant, and I'm thrilled for you and looking forward to seeing more lives transformed.
Thank you. Asante sana.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
Blessings.
Asante sana, Jim.